Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Pentagon and today's ceremony honoring two heroes who put others first and country before self. In a ceremony held yesterday at the White House, the President of the United States presented Major James Capers Jr. and Mr. Tom Ripley on behalf of his father, Colonel John Ripley, with our nation's highest and most prestigious military award for valor, the Medal of Honor. Today, it is our turn to pay tribute to these most outstanding Marines. Ladies and gentlemen, please rise for the entrance of the official party. Please remain standing for the invocation, which will be delivered by the Assistant Chaplain of the Marine Corps, Captain Stephen M. Coates.
I invite you to join me in prayer. Holy, holy, holy God, before we honor heroism like unto the exploits of David's mighty men, valor above and beyond, we bow before you, our Creator, always faithful. Thank you for your gift to all in the persons of Colonel John Ripley and Major James Capers Jr. Their persons, their decisions, their actions, their progeny, their trusted loved ones here assembled remind us of the good fundamentals of life. Waiting Father, who never leaves nor forsakes us, but in due time rewards all who earnestly seek you, the passage of decades does not diminish deeds. You were there, at that bridge over Dong Ha, in the rugged terrain of Phu Loc. But as the harsh realities of war do not easily translate over space and time, that we might rightly honor these, grant us a glimpse of your perspective of what it was like, the enormity of risk assumed, the courage mustered, the price paid, the benefit their bravery brought. Hallow this ceremony, that like them we might present our bodies as living sacrifices, whether in the extraordinary responsibilities of national leadership or in the seemingly mundane tasks of everyday care for others. Suffering servant of all, you alone know what is in a man. Accompany our nation's Marines serving forward right now, that they too may be true to your calling, and bless their families who wait. Lord, I plead that the will of the American people would be united in all that is good for the sake of true freedom. Salt and light that is humble, yes, but also devil-dog determined and strong. I ask in the name of the one before whom the knees of even heroes bow, whose tongues confessed, not to us, O Lord, but to you, always worthy to receive honor and glory and praise. Amen.
Please remain standing for our national anthem, which will be performed by the President's own United States Marine Band. Please be seated. Ladies and gentlemen, the Commandant of the Marine Corps, General Eric M. Smith.
Yeah, I appreciate that, but I'm not the one you want to be applauding for today. It is a true honor and privilege to be here today in the presence of so many of our nation's heroes. So many of our nation's heroes. Colonel Barnum, always a privilege to see you, sir. Major Capers, General Boomer, and so many of our nation's true heroes. And that word gets thrown around quite a bit. But if you read Major Capers' citation, that is heroism. It's an honor to be here today as we recognize two iconic Marines. And that word iconic is chosen for a reason. Their names now are added alongside the most revered warriors in our nation's history. Mr. Secretary, it's an honor to join you as we mark this historic occasion. Thank you for your leadership and your continued support of America's Marines. Thank you also to Ambassador Waltz and former Ambassador Britton for your presence today and for your service to our nation, both in and out of uniform. Thank you to Representatives Griffin and Representative Norman for playing a central role in making today a reality. It is an honor to have you with us. Welcome to General Kane, our Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. I'd also like to thank the Medal of Honor recipients who are here today. Again, rarefied air, rarefied air. Colonel Barney Barnum, Sergeant Dakota Meyer, we are truly in your debt, truly. Throughout the history of our Corps, only 300 Marines have received the Medal of Honor, and that number just grew by 2. That is significant. Yesterday, I had the privilege of attending a ceremony decades in the making, where our president awarded the Medal of Honor to Major James Capers, Jr., and posthumously to Colonel John Ripley. Major Capers, we're proud to call you one of our own. I speak for all Marines when I say congratulations. And those congratulations are heartfelt by every PFC, every private, up through the Commandant. Congratulations, sir. You are still looking fit to fight. We may recall you. To Tom and the Ripley family, thank you for joining us and for continuing to honor the legacy of Colonel John Ripley. Today we have the distinct honor of inducting both of these legendary Marines into the Pentagon's Hall of Heroes. Their actions in Vietnam earned them a place alongside every other Medal of Honor recipient. But their stories did not begin on the battlefield. They began at home. Long before Major Capers and Colonel Ripley earned the title Marine, their families helped shape the men they would become. For Major Capers, it was his family of sharecroppers, whose example of hard work and resilience helped forge his unshakable will, an unbreakable will. For Colonel Ripley, it was his parents, whose strength during the Great Depression taught him perseverance and determination. The Capers and Ripley households remind us that families are the bedrock of our institution. They instill America's sons and daughters with the values they need to fight and win our nation's battles. Today's inductees live those values throughout their long and illustrious careers, and especially in the crucible of their most demanding operations. In April of 1967, near Phu Loc, Vietnam, a newly commissioned Second Lieutenant Capers and his 9-man element, Team Broadminded, found themselves cut off and surrounded by a massive enemy force. Despite sustaining multiple devastating wounds, Lieutenant Capers refused to falter. Bleeding heavily, he continued to lead while directing precise artillery fire onto the advancing enemy, shattering their onslaught. As helicopters descended into the chaos, he demanded that his wounded Marines be boarded first, refusing rescue until every last survivor was flown to safety. I mean, who does that? Who does that? Major Capers did that. And now he's with us today. 5 years later, in the fury of the 1972 Easter Offensive, Captain John Ripley faced a challenge just as harrowing. While advising South Vietnamese Marines, he was charged with a monumental task: destroy the Dong Ha Bridge to halt a massive North Vietnamese advance. Dangling 50 feet over a churning river, Colonel Ripley, then Captain Ripley, hauled hundreds of pounds of explosives hand over hand beneath the bridge. I mean, think about that. Hundreds of pounds going hand over hand. That's like doing 1,000 pull-ups. And he kept going while he was braving a torrential hail of enemy fire, all designated trying to kill him, all trying to kill one man dangling below a bridge. Starved of energy and tools, he clung to consciousness, using his own teeth to crimp the blasting caps in the charges. And think about that, using his own teeth to crimp the blasting caps. After 3 agonizing hours, he detonated the charges, bringing the enemy offensive to a dead stop. For heroism that transcended the limits of human endurance, Major Capers and Colonel Ripley have been bestowed our nation's highest military honor. As we recognize their actions, it is important to remember that no Marine fights alone. Today, we honor the Marines of Team Broad-Minded, every one of them wounded alongside Second Lieutenant Capers, every one of them wounded. We honor General Walt Boomer and Colonel Jerry Turley for their actions, along with the South Vietnamese Marines who held the line at Dong Ha while Captain Ripley prepared the bridge for demolition. Just like the families who helped shape them, those who fought beside them are an important part of their story. And just as their stories do not start in Vietnam, they do not end there. Both have left an indelible mark on our institution, on your Marine Corps, setting the example worthy of emulation and inspiring generations of Marines. Major Capers forged his hard-fought combat lessons into tactics we still use to fight and win today. Colonel Ripley, though no longer with us, continues to serve as an example of the outsized effect a single determined Marine can have on the battlefield. Simply put, they are the standard we all strive to emulate, although we always fall short of your standard that you set. Their actions in Vietnam will echo in eternity, helping to ensure the United States Marine Corps remains the most feared and trusted fighting force on the face of this planet. As we reflect on their legacy, we honor those who played a central role in their stories. To the Marines of Team Broad-Minded and to those who served closely with Colonel Ripley, thank you for your service and your many sacrifices. To Major Capers, congratulations on this well-deserved recognition. Thank you for your faithful and honorable service to our nation, to our Corps, and to your fellow Marines. To the Ripley family, thank you for your unwavering support and for the trust you continue to place in us as we carry John's spirit forward. His story, along with Major Capers, will forever hold an honored place in the legacy of our Corps. We carry that legacy forward with confidence, knowing that we stand on the shoulders of giants, giants like Major Capers and Colonel Ripley. I'm going to get off the stage now so we can get about doing what we came here to do, which is honor 2 great warriors. Thank you. Semper Fidelis.
Ladies and gentlemen, the Secretary of War, the Honorable Pete Hegseth.
Well, this great morning, we have an opportunity to honor 2 Americans who volunteered in the hellish jungles of Vietnam, a place that strips a man of his dignity if you let it. They never did. Confronting a totalitarian force of atheist communism that sought to strip man of his divine dignity. These Americans heard the screams of agony and saw the brutal reality of a world organized against freedom, and they simply said no. They were Marines. When President Johnson ordered Jim Capers to rescue our POWs, Capers saluted and deployed. He first arrived at one of those awful camps thinking our men would be there, but the enemy had moved them. Capers looked at that place where the communists held and tortured our men, and he said, never again. He declared, this camp will not hold another American Marine or soldier. And so, Jim Capers and his men burned that camp to the ground. In April 1967, Lieutenant Capers went looking for a downed B-57 bomber that crashed into the mountains. But by the time he reached the site, the enemy had already been there. The crewmen were missing. All Lieutenant Capers found were goggles, and he spotted the enemy's tracks nearby. He knew that he and his men needed to get to safety. Lieutenant Capers radioed for extraction, but the answer came back. It's raining, the weather is too rough, the chopper can't fly. We can't get you right now. And so, Lieutenant Capers huddled his men together. They negotiated minefields. They swam a river. And just as they were almost to safety, the enemy opened fire on them. Lieutenant Capers, undaunted. We killed a bunch of them, he said. At long last, a Sikorsky chopper appeared. Lieutenant Capers refused to leave before his Marines, as the commandant said. And he remained in command until all his men were aboard. Bleeding and weary as the chopper lifted off, Lieutenant Capers watched as thunder and lightning and high winds and rain moved in. The chopper started to go down. Lieutenant Capers looked up at the night sky and said, I need help. He prayed, God, I need you. Well, the chopper went higher and higher, and finally home to safety. God reached out his mighty hand and kept that chopper going, Jim Capers said. God saved us when we needed to be saved. Later, Captain John Ripley confronted the same enemy. The date was Easter Sunday, 1972. His superiors ordered him to the pivotal Don Hobb Bridge with a simple order, stand and die. As Captain Ripley recalled, the only way to stop the enemy was to destroy the bridge. The mission was overwhelming, and at first Captain Ripley had no idea how he was going to carry 500 pounds of explosives there. But he still called the superior and said, I will destroy that bridge. He reached up and grabbed hold of the beam underneath the bridge. And even though the communists had rigged up German steel razor wire to protect it, Captain Ripley began kicking his way through. With his weapons slung over his back and explosives in his webbing, Captain Ripley started hand-walking himself under the bridge and out over the river. Jesus, Mary, get me there, he prayed. He repeated it rhythmically. Jesus, Mary, get me there. Exhausted and starving, Captain Ripley said that suddenly strength came. He swung up and placed the explosives into the I-beams and underneath the bridge. Later, Ripley would say, the enemy was not happy about this. They were trying to get my attention the whole time and had .30 caliber messages coming my way. But as he put it, they were never successful. On that Easter Sunday, Captain Ripley destroyed that bridge. He stopped that enemy. And in those terrible, magnificent moments, that we recall here today, the fellow warriors of then Lieutenant Capers and then Captain Ripley bore witness to a truth that no totalitarian ideology can ever suppress: that free man is made in the image of God, all men made in the image of God, and his highest destiny is love, expressed through sacrifice for his fellow man. When the hour of darkness came upon these two Marines, and the wicked were all around them, they did not turn back. They did not look for an easy way out. They prayed. They saw their duty, they went forward, and they found their way out. And the eve of our nation's 250th birthday, we recognize these men this day with that medal. By their decisions and actions in that faraway land during our battle against communism, James Capers Jr. and John Ripley proved that the breed of patriots who stood at Lexington and Concord and on the banks of the Delaware River did not die out. And those kind of patriots still guard us today. To the two Marines we salute today, you carried our flag with honor, and you will wear that medal with pride. You embodied and do embody the Marine ethos. Semper Fidelis, and may God bless our great nation. Thank you, sir.
Ladies and gentlemen, at this time, we would like to invite Major Capers to the stage for the presentation of the Medal of Honor flag and unveiling of the Hall of Heroes plaque. The President of the United States, in the name of the Congress, takes pleasure in presenting the Medal of Honor to Second Lieutenant James Capers, Jr., United States Marine Corps, for service as set forth in the following citation. For conspicuous gallantry and intrepidity at the risk of his life, above and beyond the call of duty, as a team leader with 3rd Force Reconnaissance Company, 3rd Reconnaissance Battalion in the Republic of Vietnam from 31 March to 3 April 1967. Tasked to locate a North Vietnamese regimental base camp southwest of Phu Loc and provide observation for the flank of Company M, 3rd Battalion, 26th Marines, 2nd Lieutenant Capers maneuvered his 9-man team on a 4-day patrol through rugged enemy territory. The team had contact with 20 enemy soldiers on the first day of patrol and 2 additional contacts on the second day, resulting in 1 severely wounded team member. Despite being outnumbered by enemy forces, 2nd Lieutenant Capers relentlessly pursued his vigilant and tenacious adversary and called for fire on an enemy base camp to thwart an impending attack on Company M. On the last day of the patrol, his team was engaged by a numerically superior enemy force with an initial attack from claymore mines coupled with direct and indirect fire. Despite severe pain and blood loss caused by the multiple fragmentation and gunshot wounds he sustained, Second Lieutenant Capers bravely continued to lead his team and maintain the initiative. Even after being administered morphine, he continued to coordinate supporting fires and his team's movements to a helicopter extraction site. While struggling to maintain consciousness and still under enemy attack, Second Lieutenant Capers maintained command of the situation to ensure all of his Marines were evacuated before he, barely able to stand, finally boarded the helicopter. By his bold leadership, undaunted courage, and complete dedication to duty, Second Lieutenant Capers reflected great credit upon himself and upheld the highest traditions of the Marine Corps and the United States Naval Service. Signed, Donald J. Trump, President of the United States. The Pentagon's Hall of Heroes contains the names of the service members in our nation's history who have been awarded the Medal of Honor. Major Capers now joins these illustrious warriors as the 3,534th Medal of Honor recipient to be inducted into the Hall of Heroes. Ladies and gentlemen, Major James Capers, Jr.
Hoorah! Hoorah! Thank you, Mr. Secretary. I have no words, but your applause reminds me of some dark days of some brave men who are not here today. So I'll speak for them. This is the greatest country in the world. I fought for that flag. I believed in it. We have to learn something from guys like Ripley. I knew Ripley and his family. So thank you all for being here today. And thank you all for coming here to honor a group of Marines and their families. This is very important to us to keep our legacy going. Now, I've said enough, So I'm going to say thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Secretary. God bless you. Semper Fi.
At this time, we would like to invite Mr. Tom Ripley to the stage for the presentation of the Medal of Honor flag and unveiling of Colonel Ripley's Hall of Heroes plaque. The President of the United States, in the name of the Congress, takes pride in presenting the Medal of Honor posthumously to Captain John W. Ripley, United States Marine Corps, for service as set forth in the following citation. For conspicuous gallantry and intrepidity at the risk of his life above and beyond the call of duty on 2 April 1972, while serving as Senior Marine Advisor to the 3rd Vietnamese Marine Corps Infantry Battalion in the Republic of Vietnam. Based on a report that a large and rapidly moving mechanized North Vietnamese Army force was attacking south along Route 1, 3rd Battalion was positioned to defend the key village of Dong Ha and its surrounding area. It became clear the enemy advance could not be halted unless the bridge over the river at Dong Ha was destroyed. To personally supervise this dangerous and vital mission, Captain Ripley advanced to the bridge, where he located 500 pounds of explosives that had been pre-positioned there earlier, but access to it was blocked by a chain-link fence. He was forced to climb hand over hand along the steel beams of the bridge to reposition the explosives properly so the bridge could be destroyed. On 5 separate occasions, both physically exhausted and exposed to continual enemy fire, Captain Ripley completely disregarded his own safety as he moved to key points along the bridge and securely emplaced the explosives. He then detonated the charges and destroyed the bridge, thus thwarting the enemy's assault. By his bold and audacious actions, extraordinary courage under fire, and complete dedication to duty, Captain Ripley reflected great credit upon himself and upheld the highest traditions of the Marine Corps and the United States Naval Service. Signed, Donald J. Trump, President of the United States. The Pentagon's Hall of Heroes contains the names of the service members in our nation's history who have been awarded the Medal of Honor. Colonel Ripley now joins these illustrious warriors as the 3,535th Medal of Honor recipient to be inducted into the Hall of Heroes. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Tom Ripley.
I have the horrible task of following Major Capers and trying to speak for my father. I'm one of John Ripley's 3 sons, and I have this distinct privilege and the honor to stand here on behalf of my father. It's never too late or too hard to do the right thing. Leadership is about making hard decisions and having the fortitude to bear the consequences. What you did today, Mr. Secretary, General Smith, General Kane, the entire team, and yesterday, our president, you've proven this repeatedly. This team is on a mission to correct the record, to fix the unfixable, to do the right thing, regardless of the cost. Our president did that yesterday, and we are lucky and fortunate to have that type of leadership. Thank you, sir. As our Commandant said, nothing great is ever accomplished by the individual. It's always accomplished by the team. The actions leading up to destroying the bridge are a perfect example of this truth. The training my father received as a Marine officer, as a Force Reconnaissance Marine, attending the U.S. Army Ranger School, and the Royal Marine Commando course gave him the skills to blow that bridge. The leadership of his senior advisor, Lieutenant Colonel Jerry Turley, at 95 years old, is seated with us today. Yeah, don't help him stand up. He's going to stand up on his own. There you go. A remarkable man thrust into a no-win situation, trying to stop 3 divisions of North Vietnamese and a mechanized force with over 200 tanks and with a handful of Marine advisors. To the west, 3 fire bases, Quezon, Camp Carroll, and Firebase Sarge, were stationed Captain Ray Smith and then Major Walt Boomer. Those fire bases were quickly overrun with no river to stop the invading force. Later, Captain Smith would receive the Navy Cross for saving Major Boomer as their bases were overrun. Both legends of our Corps. Still again, First Lieutenant Joel Eisenstein, also with us here today, the leader of Team 1-2, 1st Anglico, brought the awesome fires of the United States Navy. At first, just the USS Buchanan with her 5-inch 54 main gun. She would later be joined on the line by 5 U.S. Navy destroyers, the Waddell, the Strauss, the Anderson, and the Hamner. The awesome firepower of these ships, a squadron of Navy destroyers. When it comes to supporting your Marines, the U.S. Navy never fails to answer the call. Countless other acts of heroism occurred. Most importantly, my father would never speak about this action without mentioning the South Vietnamese Marines that he advised. On March 30th, just 3 days prior to blowing the bridge, his battalion was the final reserve committed, ordered to go to Dong Ha and try to slow the force. A little over than 10 days later, that unit stood in formation. Of the 650 men sent to Dong Ha, 52 men stood in formation. Nothing great is ever accomplished by the individual. It's always accomplished by the team. And this award is for the team. Lastly, probably the most important teammate. At every promotion, at every award ceremony, at every event, my father would thank my mother. She was the driving force behind his accomplishments. When he blew up the bridge, Captain Ripley was on his second 13-month combat tour. And my mother, the quintessential military spouse, was at home with a 7-year-old and my sister and I, under the age of 2. The silent fight that military spouses forge on a daily basis is nothing short of remarkable. My father would rightly recognize my mother at every event as his source of strength. Everything they did as a team. Next to every great man is a woman that expects nothing less. My father and both of his brothers were all Marines, Marine officers serving in Vietnam. Yesterday, as the President presented my family with my father's medal, that was the 55-year anniversary to the day of my Uncle Mike, a Marine fighter pilot with VMA 231, was killed in service 55 years ago today, or yesterday, excuse me. My brother and I proudly serve in the Marines. My nephews are Marines. One forward deployed with the 11th MU right now. My son commissioned an ensign in the Navy just a month ago by my brother at General Kane. As a father, I take incredible pride in both the leadership and the renewed lethality in our armed force. It is stronger today than ever before. On Easter Sunday, beneath the bridge, John Ripley resigned himself to the likelihood that he would not survive. He had one thing on his mind: accomplish the mission. We're United States Marines. That's what we do. After the bridge was destroyed and the invasion halted, my father was asked to provide an update via radio a few days later. His sitrep, ever the optimist, he captured the moment perfectly. And so I'll close my comments with that radio message in his words. Leatherneck, this is Leatherneck Delta. Report. Powder dry, morale high, semper fi.
Ladies and gentlemen, please remain standing for the Marines hymn. Ladies and gentlemen, please be seated. Ladies and gentlemen, please remain in your seats for the departure of the Secretary of War. Ladies and gentlemen, this concludes our ceremony. Please exit the auditorium at the rear right door and await instructions from the Marine escorts standing by in the hallway. Thank you for your attendance, and Semper Fidelis.